Hi, welcome to lecture 6, and we are in our final couple of weeks. This is week 7. This module goes from April 15th to April 21st, and the whole purpose of it is to learn how to put in effective grading practices in middle school and high school environments. In particular, we'll focus on the processes that lead to differentiated assessment. So, I know that in middle school settings and in high school settings, you are pretty much restricted to the time frames that go with the progress monitoring and also the end of course exams that you have no choice in changing. But the process to getting to those assessments, those state required assessments, and also the MAPS assessments, you do have control over, and you can manipulate some of the things in which you do on a daily basis to ensure that all students are getting a fair shot at reaching their highest potential and the skills that they're required to master by the end of the year. So for this week, it's a little different. Number one, you have two things due, which includes the individual practice to demonstrate understanding. Number 4, and that's final project check-in number 2. So you did final project check-in number 1. Now you have final project check-in number 2. Hopefully by the end of it, you'll be able to produce the outcomes that are necessary for you to show that you understand how to revamp your current teaching practices in order to differentiate the process. You may not be able to differentiate the final outcome or the final requirement, but you can differentiate the process. By now, you should have gotten your midterm projects back, although this video will be released early, so if you haven't gotten them back by Thursday, please let me know. They take a little bit of time to grade. The midterms serve as a opportunity for you to then build on the second part of it, which is the final project. So between last week's feedback and then this week's feedback, please make sure that you apply all of it so that you can have a really firm final outcome. Secondly, this week's requirements are that you do the video reflection. So I took out the quiz because I felt like, I changed the readings. They're very small readings for this week, so it really wasn't necessary for you to have a quiz. The purpose of this module in particular is to look at secondary settings. By the end of this unit, hopefully you'll be able to examine current practices and how to best improve them to meet the needs of learners in secondary settings. So everyone knows that we deal with diverse students from different cultures, different learning abilities, and also different ways of accessing overall content. I have changed the reading. So because I felt like it didn't do us justice. You can look at the Hanover Research Report, however, it's not a required reading for this week. Most of the things that are mentioned within the report actually are discussed within the articles, just in a more teacher-friendly language, and also just in a way that provides a kind of overview of strategies that you can employ really quickly as opposed to a longer version. So the objectives are pretty simple: diverse methods of grading at the secondary level, and hopefully by the end you'll pick up some grading practices for struggling learners in secondary settings. Sorry about that. I hate the typos. Okay, so by the end, like I said, I'm hoping that number one, you can look at your chart and see the current challenges with your grading practices that do not support diverse learners, and then evaluate the suggested grading and assessment practices for secondary settings by identifying the challenge, evaluating what you can do based on what the readings say, and then hopefully putting those things into action within your final project. The readings for this week are 2. We do have the optional reading, the Hanover Report, which I'll add as a resource. but they are two which I think are pretty simple. Differentiation, closing the gap between frustration and success, and then from differentiated instruction to differentiated assessment. Next week, we'll get into a little bit more of the process, but this is kind of like an introduction into things that you should be considering while you are reading and viewing the content. So this week, you have 7 or 8 slides that are focusing in on the readings, the 2 of them, and then the second half of the lecture is on you. You have to view the videos. The videos are long, just to warn you, but they're really good strategies and they go over a plethora of resources. So I encourage you to space out some time. Each of them are about 30 minutes, one in a middle school setting, one in a high school setting, but they will be really beneficial to you. So take note on some of the things that they're doing, and also make sure you put the time into being able to review those videos. 2 things that you should consider. How can you adjust your current practices while following grading practices at your school? Sorry for the redundancy in the word practices, but we all know that grading is pretty much set in some environments, so what can you do? And you can focus on the process, so hopefully you feel like you can, and that you can start to envision the changes that you can make to your current grading practices to better support our students. And then what strategies can you integrate differently to ensure differentiation in the process of assessment is embedded within each of your activities. So I do expect to see mention of particular strategies. I know some of you have a general way of stating what you will be changing, but for this particular assignment, you want to make sure that you have concrete strategies and methods that you will employ to ensure that you're differentiating according to what research is stating as best practices for the process of differentiating in a way of formative assessment. So please make sure you write down some of the things that you see, as I will ask these same 2 questions in the video reflection that you'll do this week. If you have any questions, please let me know, but go on to lecture 2, which is the only lecture for this week outside of the introduction.